Hi guys, Marian here. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I wanted to share all about what it's like growing up Jewish. What was my experience like growing up in a Jewish home, going to Jewish schools, and just being a Jewish person in America. So I asked over on my Instagram what questions you guys had about this, and I'm just gonna go ahead and answer them. If this is your first video and you're new here, I better make my phone on silent. Then welcome, my name is Mary and I make videos about being a mom and being a Jewish mom, and I would love to have you as one of my subscribers, so don't forget to hit that red subscribe button down below. It just means that when you go to YouTube, you'll see my videos in your feed. And give this video a thumbs up if you like it so I know to make more like this. By the way, in the new year, my big plan for 2022 is to share a lot more about how me and my family celebrates Shabbat. I want I swear I just turned this off. I want to share more of our daily life and celebrating Shabbat. So if you're into that, let me know. Okay, so it's a cold, wintry, cozy day here. I've got my coffee, I'm in my office, and I'm just gonna jump in and answer these questions that again I asked over on my Instagram. Okay, so the first one, and I chose the ones that were the most popular, that came up the most often. Yeah, okay, so this one was, did you go to school just for Jewish people or one where there were lots of different religions? So for me, from the time I was a toddler, preschool until 8th grade, I went to Jewish day school, and that meant that there was only Jewish people there. And then in 9th grade, I went to public school for 1 year, and then I went to a private secular school from 10th through 12th grade. So basically, yes, I went to Jewish school from preschool through 8th grade. I absolutely loved it. I had a super positive experience, and I felt like it was such a warm, cozy family kind of. It felt very nurturing and loving, and I learned so much and grew so much. Looking back on it now, I definitely acknowledge that it was very insular. And I grew up without knowing and experiencing a lot of diversity day to day, because everyone that I went to school with was a lot like me. Almost everyone was white. They all were Jewish. They all were middle to upper middle class. So it definitely was its own little bubble, but it was also this lovely, cozy, nice bubble. So being in a Jewish school also meant that we didn't learn about anything Christian. We didn't Halloween, Christmas, those things just weren't even mentioned at school. And we had half the day was English learning or English and maths, and the second half of the day was Hebrew and Judaica studies. So there's some criticism that if you graduate from a Jewish school, you don't learn as much as secular schools because you're spending half your day learning Hebrew and Judaic studies. But I think the schools do a really good job of incorporating lessons, weaving them in throughout so that you're not actually missing core blocks of things. And we still had science and math and all that stuff, and I think we just probably had a little bit of a longer day. And I know the Jewish schools now work really hard to make sure their students are completely ready for high school and college, and everyone that I went to school with went to college and beyond, so we were all totally fine. And I went to a really competitive high school, and I would say I didn't feel like I was behind or anything on any of my English learning or math learning, because we had devoted time to Hebrew and Jewish studies. And I'm probably talking too much about one question, but I mean, it was a big focus of my life, was being in Jewish school. We also had a lot of extracurricular different things that were Jewish based. So for example, every grade would put on a play once a year, but it was always tied to the Torah or Bible studies or a Jewish holiday. And for every Jewish holiday throughout the year, we would learn about it, make crafts for it. So it was definitely a big focus. There was no way you could walk into a Jewish school and think and not know that you were in a Jewish school. But I also went to conservative Jewish day schools in Los Angeles, so people looked and dressed like me. It was not Orthodox, so that's a difference as well. The Orthodox Jewish schools, I would say, are probably different from my experience. There are some that are similar, but for me, the conservative Jewish day schools very much compete with the secular private day schools in the LA area and try to give a similar education as much as possible. Okay, that was definitely too long on one question. I'll try to make it a little bit shorter. As a young girl, did you have girlfriends who were not Jewish? So I really didn't, because I didn't really meet other girls that were not Jewish, except I played soccer. That was like a big focus of my life growing up, and I met girls that weren't Jewish playing soccer, and we were definitely like great friends, you know, on the team, but I didn't see them so much outside of soccer. So I was exposed and like did meet some friends that weren't Jewish, but by and large, almost all my friends were Jewish growing up until about high school. Okay, sorry if this is too nosy, but how or what were you taught about Jesus? So like I mentioned, we weren't taught anything about Christianity or any other religion until 7th or 8th grade, I think. We had a comparative religions class, and we learned about all the different religions in the world. We even got to like go visit churches, which I know for myself, I'm sure for most of us, it was our first time ever going into a church, so that was like very exciting. So we learned, I'm sure we learned about Jesus in that class. I think from like my memory of 7th grade, it was his story was framed in a historical context, like what was going on at the time, you know, like Constantine, like just everything, you know, the empires at the time, the rising messiahs at the time, and just, you know, his story in that sense, and then how Christianity was spread across the world. So that's really how we learned about it. It was never like framed in a negative sense or like this is wrong and we're right. It was more just like these are the facts, this is his life, these are the people who believe in what he does now, kind of thing. The next question is, were you exposed to anti-Semitism? So thankfully, very thankfully, I was not. So I grew up in LA, which is a very, you know, there are tons of Jewish people, and I was in very like insular community, so I wasn't really exposed to people that weren't Jewish, you know, that often, if you know what I mean, like in my day-to-day, like at school life. I wore my Jewish star necklace through all of high school, in my secular private high school, and never got a single comment. And I went to UCLA for my undergrad degree, and even though UCLA has a reputation for like being very anti-Israel and anti-Semitic, I personally never experienced that, and I was very involved with Jewish on-campus life, some Israel stuff as well, but it could have just been like the years that I was there. I know things are really different now, or that's what I hear, but I really honestly didn't, and I'm very thankful for that. And I think a lot of that was just being in LA, where there's just so many Jewish people. It's like totally normal. Okay, the next question is, did you celebrate Shabbat and the holidays growing up? So yeah, we did celebrate Shabbat. Most Friday nights we went to synagogue, and we always had Shabbat dinner. It was always a special meal that my mom like prepared for. We always had a challah, lit candles, that kind of thing. And we did celebrate all the Jewish holidays. But yeah, I'm in here. But we didn't keep Shabbat in the sense that like on Saturdays I would go play soccer, if that makes sense. So if you're Orthodox in Judaism, that like makes no sense to you, or like that's totally illogical, but that's just how we did it. It was like Friday night was Shabbat, and Saturday in some sense was Shabbat. Like my mom, we definitely had certain rules, like didn't like to go shopping and that kind of thing, and we would never like host a party on Shabbat. There was just certain things we didn't do, and we kept kosher outside the home and inside the home, but I was allowed to, like I said, play soccer, and if there was something going on, I would do it on a Saturday, if that makes sense. And that's sort of how we live our life now. I would say, I mean, we don't go to synagogue on Friday nights because I have really little kids, but we often will go on Saturday mornings. But then Saturday afternoon, we would do something that's not strictly, you know, keeping Shabbat. And Friday night we always have Shabbat dinner, but I would say, I mean, it might just be the season of life I'm in right now, but we don't always like have that special of a meal, but we do always light candles. We tend not to go out on Friday nights, but it's also been a pandemic for the past 3 years, and I have a newborn and a toddler, so I don't know exactly how things will look in the future. Okay, growing up, did you ever date non-Jewish guys? I did not, or I never really seriously dated non-Jewish guys. I think I was always interested, I always like preferred kind of a long-term relationship, and was always kind of drawn towards people that shared the same values and lifestyle that I did. Also in high school, I was very involved in USY, which is like the youth group for conservative Jews. So I was spending my weekends and evenings doing USY activities. So I wasn't hanging out that much with like my secular high school friends at that time. And in college, again, I was doing a lot of like Jewish on-campus stuff. And I would say in high school, I was more religious than I am now. or more observant. I don't know about spiritual, but I was like more into it. I think it was because of like just being really involved in the youth group at the time. It was like, that's what I was spending my time doing, and those were like the people that I was meeting or being attracted to and dating. So no, I never really did. Next question is, did you feel left out at Christmas or other Christian holidays? So again, because I was in like this little bubble, I didn't really growing up, because I wasn't experiencing people celebrating Christmas and other Christian holidays very often. And it's not like it is now with social media. I would say now I have way more Christmas envy than I did growing up, because I'm like exposed to it so much more, especially online. But I definitely did a little bit growing up. Like I really distinctly remember at soccer, these girls explaining to us that their birthday presents were not as big as their Christmas presents. And I was like, oh, well, so I've only achieved birthday level of gifts. Like I've never gotten to Christmas level of gifts. So definitely, like I remember that occurring in my mind. And I've always loved like Christmas music and Christmas movies. You know, I just like this time of year. Like we would always go to Santa Barbara with my family around Christmas. And unlike LA, like I feel like Santa Barbara is a town which is has way more Christians or way less Jewish people. And I would see a lot more Christmas stuff, you know, around there, like over winter break. And it always seemed nice, because like as a Jewish person who's still very much part of like American culture and society, I feel like you still kind of experience a lot of the Christmas buildup. Like if you go to any store, you're out and about, you're listening to the music, seeing all the lights go up, like seeing everyone, you know, prepping, getting ready. And then Christmas Day, everyone's off work, there's nothing to do, and it's like this cold winter day, but there's no like, there's nothing. So it feels like it's like kind of this letdown, like we're still kind of like hopping around watching everyone get ready, and then we're like, oh right, we don't celebrate that holiday. But actually a lot of Jewish people do get together Christmas Eve and eat Chinese food. It's kind of traditional. It's not like religious in any way. It's just that Chinese restaurants were often the ones that were open on Christmas Eve, and Jewish people like had off work anyways, and you know, we're like, oh, let's just get together and go out for Chinese food. There's also things now like the matzo ball, where like for, you know, young adults, there's like parties and things like that that just are scheduled for Christmas Eve because there's nothing else going on. So I don't know where I was going with that one, but anyways, that is the majority of the questions. If you guys have any others, just pop them in the comment section. I would say I lived a very typical Jewish growing up experience for LA, for conservative Jews, is what I would say. So if Jews from other parts of the country probably lived a pretty different experience, and Jewish people who were either Reform or Orthodox probably had a very different experience. So this is my my personal story. The other thing which I haven't mentioned on here is going to Jewish summer camp. I didn't do it so much growing up, but because my family lives in South Africa and we would always be visiting families in the summer. But when I was in high school, I started as like a CIT and then a camp counselor for my Jewish summer camp. And that again was like a huge part of my life growing up, a huge group of friends, many of whom I'm still friends with. So, and also just like building Jewish values. So like my camp was really, really focused on the environment and caring for it and caring for our world and caring for others. And so that, those kind of values were really instilled in me. And that was definitely part of Jewish school as well. Again, just like those values that they really teach the kids, being like kind to one another and all that, definitely has like stuck with me throughout my life. So I am very grateful for my Jewish upbringing, and my kids definitely will experience it differently, but I hope we'll also have a positive connection. And speaking of my kids, I think they are no longer being patient with me filming this video, so I better run. And to all my Christian followers, I'm wishing you a very Merry Christmas. I know there's so many of you that are watching these just to like learn about Jewish culture and Jewish people, and I so appreciate that. So I just want to wish you a very warm and happy holiday. And to everyone, I want to wish you a Happy New Year. I'll see you in 2022. Bye!